What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today we are going to be doing a head-to-head battle of arguably two of the most iconic folding knives that have ever been a part of the knife world. We've got the large Chris Reeve Inkosi, and we've also got the Hinderer XM18. And I know the first thing people are going to wonder here is, why didn't you pit the Sebenza against the XM18? Here's why. I think the Inkosi, given that it is the Sebenza's larger, more, well, arguably more hard use oriented folding knife of the two, I think it's a better matchup for the XM18. Also, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, guys, I think the Inkosi is a better folding knife than the Sebenza all the way around. That's just me. This entire head-to-head battle is going to be based on my opinion. It's going to be based on things that I look for in a folding knife. So regardless of how I score this, what I want you guys to keep in mind is, out of all these categories and where I'm giving points and things, what you need to ask yourself is, which of these categories are important to me? You know, as far as how I'm going to use these knives. If either of these knives scores in a way, you know, that in categories that are important to you and other categories that are not important to you, that's what you should take into consideration, not necessarily which one I deem the better of the two. That way, you know, I know there are people who feel very strongly towards one model or the other. And I don't want to make anybody mad, and I want to be as fair as possible, because truthfully, I love both of these knives. But I thought it would be really fun to do a battle. So there's not going to be any size comparisons, obviously. So let's start off by doing some measurements here. They are very similar in overall length, with the Inkosi coming in at about, looks to be about 8.4 inches overall, not quite 8.5 inches. The Hinderer XM18 coming in at exactly 8.25 inches. So the Inkosi is a little bit longer of a knife. Moving on to the blade and cutting edge. Blade length on the Inkosi looks to be just shy of 3.75, and the cutting edge looks to be just shy of 3.5. Looks like a 3.4 inch cutting edge, possibly right on 3.5. Now, on this Hinderer XM18, this specific version, this is a DLT Trading no-choil Spanto model. So this version does not have the choil, making it a maximized knife in terms of usable blade length, in the Hinderer line anyway. And it comes in at exactly 3.5 inches on the cutting edge. Another reason why I think this makes, this particular one makes a very good comparison. Also, another thing to point out here, I have two upgraded versions of each knife. This Inkosi has the micarta inlays, and this XM18 has the upgraded titanium scale. Now, multiple times I'm going to be talking about cost of base versus cost of upgrades, things like that, because a lot of those things are going to be taken into consideration. So keep all that in mind. I'll give examples so that it all makes sense. Let's go ahead and weigh these guys here real quick. Move them both back. And again, I'm sure people are wondering, now wait a sec, you know, that XM18 comes standard in G10, and the Inkosi comes standard in titanium. Well, we've got a guest appearance here that we're going to be using for the standard weight of the XM18. So the Inkosi coming in at 4.76 ounces. Let's do another weight there just to be sure. 4.76, so not quite 5. Now, that's a full titanium knife, so let's weigh the XM18 in full titanium. Wow, 6.25. That's a heavy guy. Definitely having to do with the thickness. 6.31. Yeah, it's up there, definitely. Let's do the standard weight of the XM18. This is the version of the XM18 that is the vintage series, but it comes with a, you know, the same way that an XM18 comes, the front scale, the liner, and then the tie side. So, standard weight of an XM18, 5.22 ounces. I'm pretty sure 5.25 is what they list them officially as, so that's going to be very accurate there. So 5.25. Anyways, let's move on to our first category, and that will actually give me an opportunity to show you guys how I'm going to score this. So here is my score system. You can see there up at the top as how I'm going to score these. If I put an H by a category, it's going to be for the Hinderer. If I put an R by a category, it's going to be for the Reeve. If I put a T by a category, it's going to be a tie. The first category is going to be functional. That way I can keep separated everything that, there's going to be people here who are only going to take into consideration functional aspects of each knife. And there are going to be people watching this video who are going to take into consideration non-functional aspects of each knife. So you've got those two categories and then value. And then in between each of these categories, the subcategories of functional are blade performance, usable edge, blade options, deployment, ergonomics, durability, ease of carry, weight, ease of disassembly, and warranty. For non-functional, you have aesthetics, fit and finish, customization. And for value, we've got price/materials. Now, like I said, not all of these categories are going to be important to every single person. These are categories that are important to me. Everything that I take into consideration before I buy a knife. But I separated them so that it kind of, it speaks broadly to as many different types of people as possible. So, again, just the stuff that's important to you, that's what you should take into consideration if you were considering one of either of these knives. Let's go ahead and move this out of the way. We're going to start off with blade performance. Whoops, about knocked the camera over. That's probably going to be the best way to start this here. Let me go ahead and adjust that ever so slightly. So, blade performance. Now, I think it's important to first point out here that we have two very different thicknesses between these knives. The XM18 is definitely going to be thicker. Let's go ahead and see if we can focus here. There we go. The XM18 is going to be a thicker knife at 0.165 stock thickness. The Inkosi, however, is going to be only, I believe, 0.145, which is about the same thickness as a Spyderco Paramilitary 2. Some people measure it as slightly thinner. So that's going to have to do, with how the blade is ground. Now, I have, in my opinion, I've got the best example for the range of different cutting performances that have to do with the XM18, because the XM18 has fatty XMs, they've got skinny XMs, and they've got the regular. The fatty's 0.187, the regular is 0.165, and the skinny is 0.145. So the skinny version of it is actually just as thin as the Inkosi. And then they've got multiple different blade shapes. The Inkosi has one other blade shape, the Insingo, which is the sheep's foot. So that's really about it. So basically what I'm saying is that given that I've got one of the thickest versions of probably the chunkiest edge geometry in a blade design from Hinderer being the Spanto, I'll be able to give a good example because I think these two are going to perform very similarly. And so anything in between is going to be in my opinion, kind of a negligible thing when it comes to cutting performance. So let's do 3 passes with the Inkosi. Very slicey. I caught that one on accident there, so we'll give it another pass. Yeah, very good cutting performance there. Slightly more resistance than a PM2. I'll use that as kind of the base example, just to give you guys an idea. And now we'll do a brand new sheet of paper for the XM18 Spanto. Whoop. Truthfully, boy, I honestly was expecting a little bit more resistance from the XM. So the XM has more resistance than the Inkosi, but it is not super noticeable. I had to take a bunch of extra passes there to really feel it. It definitely does have more resistance. But it's I guess that's all I'm saying there. There's more resistance, but it's ever so slight. So, take that in consideration if you're looking for the Spanto. Now, something that does have to be pointed out in this category, and it'll come up again in my blade options category, is that there are an enormous amount of options when it comes to not only, blade shapes, but the thickness. The thinnest and probably sliciest blade shape of all these being the skinny slicer that is now available in XM18 form. given that it is exactly the same price at base as a base XM18, which we'll go over in value and price, it has to be considered in this. If you're considering either of these knives, chances are you've looked at the massive variety between the two knives. So, truthfully, between these two, I'm gonna say that cutting performance is probably gonna be a tie. You've got the two options with the Inkosi, and you've got however many combinations and options with the XM18. You've got Bowie, Skinner, Spear Point, Spanto, Harpoon Tanto. You've got the Sheep's Foot. You've got, did I say Slicer? And the Wharncliffe, and I don't know, I think, and the new Deep Swedge. And I think there's a Sparrow grind. There's so many grinds. Now, the Skinny is only available in two forms, Harpoon, Spanto, and Slicer at the time of this video. But given that one of those forms is Slicer, I'm gonna go ahead and guess, and I think it's safe to guess that the Skinny Slicer is gonna be a pretty good slicer. Given that I don't have one here on the table, though, I am gonna, like I said, I'm gonna give blade performance to both of these knives. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark that with a T. Okay, let's talk about usable edge. That's the next category here. Both of these knives have roughly a 3.5 inch cutting edge. The Hinderer, you've got the option with the no choil Spanto, and you've also got the option to get one that's got the choil in there. So the one with the choil is only going to have about a 3.25 inch cutting edge, something like that. But given the fact that you've got an option for both, again, I'm going to give them both a tie. There's not really much to talk about there. The next category is blade options. This is something that just got brought up in blade performance. The Hinderer flat out has way more options. That is something that is a functional, it definitely belongs in the functional category, and it absolutely is something that is going to be considered by anybody who is considering the Hinderer or the Inkosi. If you're only considering the Inkosi, then obviously blade options doesn't matter. But if you're watching this, I have to assume that you might be trying to figure out which one of these that you're going to pick. So all of the blade options are definitely going to be something that you're going to take into consideration. You can see here, just because I've got it on the table, the difference between, these are probably two of the most similar blade shapes. The Spear Point does not have that compound line that the Spanto does. You can see here on the Spanto has that line at the front, increasing tip strength out at the end. You can see how far out that flat carries versus the Spear Point. There's a lot of different blade shapes that change the main cutting edge geometry. They change the tip, how thick it is. It changes the belly, whether or not there is a belly in the case of the Wharncliffe. So a lot of different things that's going to more or less suit your cutting needs in terms of the Hinderer XM18. Now, the nice thing about the Chris Reeve blade is that it is a unbelievably functional classic drop point blade. It is thin enough that it has great cutting performance. It's got enough belly that it's going to have great cutting performance, and the thickness of the tip is carried out reasonably all the way to the tip. And then if you don't want a drop point, you have an option for a sheep's foot. So even though it doesn't have all these crazy different grinds like Harpoon, Spanto, and Bowie and Wharncliffe, it's got a couple of blade shapes that are going to get the job done. So I'm going to give blade options to Hinderer, but that doesn't mean that the Hinderer is the best and the Reeve is terrible in this category here. The Reeve has enough going for it that you would be happy with either blade shape should you choose the Chris Reeve. Now let's talk about deployment here. You've got two completely different knives in terms of how they feel when you deploy them. The Chris Reeve, as now everybody should be aware, has a more what is often described as a glassy or hydraulic action. This is not a knife that you're going to be deploying quickly or flicking out. It's not going to have that thwack. So if you're looking for that in terms of either fidget factor or just I don't know, just because you enjoy that. You get some sort of sense of satisfaction out of that. And believe me, I know what that feels like. You're not going to find that in this knife. This is going to be a knife that you pull out and you open casually and then use. I know there are people in the comments section who want to tell me, well, mine flicks out. I'm sure you can, but I think the idea here, and actually if you look up information on this, is Chris Reeve talks about not wanting to emphasize doing that and wanting to let people know, like, hey, open your knives slowly because it decreases the wear over time. So that's partially why this is made like that. It's going to be a slow opener. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just different. Now, in terms of the XM18, you have this new generation, which is absolutely a factor. This is the Gen 6. As of the time of this video, it is the only knife in existence, or the Hinderer is the only brand that has a pivot system that is interchangeable between phosphor bronze, nylon, and bearings, giving you not only the option of what you want to use in what scenario, but it gives the knife a different feeling. So if you're a fidgety type of person who likes a bearing action, this knife is going to deploy very quick and give you that sense of satisfaction. Same way with the thumb stud, it works perfectly. If you're the type of person that's going to be more hard use oriented, maybe you want to put phosphor bronze in there, maybe nylon. My point is that you have that action that most people are looking for in today's world with a modern tactical folding knife. Now, the reason I'm going to give deployment to the Hinderer is not necessarily because of the tri-way pivot system. That's great, but that's an opinion-based thing. I'm going to give the deployment to the Hinderer because there are two means of deployment on the knife. That's not necessarily the biggest deal to most people. Some people are going to prefer, let's say you really, really like the Inkosi, but you like flippers. You don't have that option on the Inkosi. It's just not, it's not there. On the Hinderer, they've got non-flippers, they've got flippers, but both have the thumb studs. So whether you are a flipper person or you're a thumb stud person, you have that option between both. So while that might seem a little bit unfair, I do have to score it that way. So I'm going to go ahead and give that to Hinderer. Next up, we've got ergonomics, and this is going to be a quick category. Listen, I love the ergonomics on Hinderers. I love the forward choil. I love the handle. Not everybody likes a forward choil. Some people want to maximize the blade. So if we're going purely off of this hand position right here, truthfully, it's a tie. These are both amazing. There's no hot spots anywhere. Every last little tiny ergonomic detail was taken into consideration with both knives. And both knives are created by, people who are masters in their craft. So it would be silly to try and say that one has better ergonomics over the other. They are truthfully both made to be, just melt into your hand. And absolutely they take the end user in mind. While when they design the ergonomics on each, that's just how they are. They're both excellent, so that's going to be a tie for this category here. Next category is going to be durability, which is frankly also going to be a quick category. Both knives are made out of titanium. Both have ridiculous tolerances when it comes to how everything fits together. The Hinderer has the big bracing lugs on the frame, but the gigantic washers on the Inkosi also are going to attribute to the blade stabilization. Both of them have, lock faces that are not directly titanium. In terms of durability, I could break every last little thing down, but both of these knives are incredibly durable, and it would, again, be kind of stupid to pick one over the other. This is going to be another tie. Okay, now, before I move on to the next category, I'm sure you guys are thinking, I've watched this guy's videos. He is a Hinderer fan. I can see where this is going. I looked at that chart, and I looked at everything that Hinderer could win, and I'm thinking he's going to pick the Hinderer. Hold your horses. I promise you, this is going to get a little bit more interesting here. The next category is going to be ease of carry. Now, I love carrying my XM18. I don't carry this one. This one's a Grail, but I have had XM users in the past, so I'm very used to carrying this one. I currently carry the Inkosi, so I definitely can speak to this, absolutely. The Hinderer XM18 has 2 carry positions, tip up or tip down. It is a right hand only knife. The Inkosi has 1 carry position. It's going to be tip up, but you can get left-handed versions of the knife. Now, on top of that, the Inkosi is also a thinner knife. Let me focus up here real quick. The Inkosi is substantially thinner, actually. Let's see if we can get up close. Yeah, you can see there the thickness between the two it's no contest. It's just a thinner knife. It also is a longer knife, but look at this. I mean, you can see here in the pictures the overall size of the XM18 looks to be bigger, not only in height, but in length. Now, when you deploy the blade, even though this knife does not have a forward choil, you can see here that the Inkosi is actually a longer knife overall. So the fact that the footprint or the silhouette is thinner, this way, and you also have just a larger length overall, but you've also got, sorry, there's a lot of dynamics here. You've also got a lighter knife overall. It doesn't matter if you go with the G10 version or the one with the front scale that's not titanium. The Inkosi just wins all the way around. It's accommodating for left-handed people, even though it only has 1 tip position. And I know you can get those scales from Rick Hinderer that allow for the other side of the pocket clip position, but you have to pay extra for that. As far as I know, if you want a left-handed model from Chris Reeve, you just pay the same price. It's just got the pocket clip mounted on the other side, or everything's in reverse. Actually, the frame lock is also in reverse, whereas on the XM18 the frame lock is not reversed, making it slightly harder for a left-handed person. I'm not left-handed, so I can show you here. You can still manipulate it with your left hand. It's not really that big of a deal, but it would be easier if it was a left-handed model. Now, obviously, that doesn't really matter to me, but it absolutely is going to matter to any left-handed viewers out there. So something to take in mind. So ease of carry, absolutely 100% goes to Chris Reeve. Let me mark that one here. Next category is weight. That's also going to be a fast category because we just went over it. The Chris Reeve weighs less. Weighs less than the standard version of the XM18, and it weighs less than this titanium one, absolutely. So that one's also going to go to Chris Reeve. Next category is ease of disassembly. I'm sure, now, fans of the Chris Reeve, you're just watching this just to see where I end up. You're kind of, it's starting to come back here. Ease of disassembly, I'm also going to give to Chris Reeve because, number 1, there's definitely less parts. Number 2, he gives you the tool. I've taken apart the XM18. In fact, I have a video on it. I don't think it's that hard. I've done it a million times. I'm used to it. I've only taken apart Chris Reeve's knives a couple of times, and I can say definitively, easily, the Chris Reeve, most Chris Reeve knives, especially the Umnumzan, the Inkosi, and the Sebenza, at least, because I haven't handled the other models. Those knives are incredibly easy to take down. So ease of disassembly is definitely going to go with Chris Reeve here. Next category, or in the last category in function, is going to be warranty. And this is also going to be a quick category. Both makers are not locking you out of the knife. They warranty the knives for life. I believe it's limited to the person who buys it, so it's a non-transferable warranty. I think. I'm not going to talk about that. But as far as what it covers, it covers any defects or flaws that are not caused by basically misuse of the knife. So if you were using either knife as a knife the way that it's intended, and you're not going around doing ridiculous destruction tests or prying, you're not throwing it into stuff, stuff that's stupid to do with a knife, stuff that nobody would ever need to do with a knife, then these knives are covered. And that's great. That's how it should be. And you can take them apart and maintain them yourself. Oh no, but the Rick Hinderer's got this proprietary pivot that's you can't get in there. You can. I've said this a million times on my videos. So just to stop anybody from making a comment, you can buy a spanner tool for about $1.60 anywhere online. or you can do the thing with the penny if you want to. That's what I did. It won't set you back much, and you can absolutely take the knife apart. As far as warranty goes, it's a tie. So let's take a look here. Now that we're at a point where I can do this, since we're about to move on into the next category, let's take a look at where we're at between the two knives. You can see here that in function, blade performance was a tie, usable edge was a tie, blade options went to Hinderer, deployment went to Hinderer, ergonomics was a tie, durability was a tie, ease of carry went to Chris Reeve, weight went to Chris Reeve, and ease of disassembly went to Chris Reeve, with the final category or subcategory warranty being a tie. So in terms of function, I gotta say, despite me being biased towards Hinderer knives, functionally, the Chris Reeve is going to win there. Let's move on into non-functional. The first category in non-functional, or the first subcategory in non-functional, is aesthetics, which is kind of a stupid category. I'm not really sure now, thinking back, why I added this one in here, because this is purely opinion-based. Fortunately, I can tell you that having handled and carried and used both, I like the aesthetics of both. I don't know that I could specifically pick one over the other. They're both beautiful. They're both of the stone washing that's used. I'm a huge fan of stone wash. You know, I've said this before. If I could only choose one finish for the rest of my life, it would be stone wash. It's just absolutely beautiful, despite my ugly fingerprints that are on this blade. Let's see if we can clean that off without me cutting myself here real quick. And I'm just going to keep talking so that there's not awkward dead silence while I'm using my shirt to clean off the blade of this knife. Anyways, well, come on now. We almost got it. The stone washing on the Hinderer is absolutely beautiful. 100% love that finish. But, of course, the finish on the Chris Reeve is very, very similar. A little bit more, you know, kind of a fine grain stone wash, not quite as present with the little nicks. Some people prefer those extra nicks in the tumbling process, and some people don't. They both have beautiful aesthetic stone washing. I like the bead blast on the handles of the Chris Reeve, and I also like the tumbling on the titanium of the XM. There are a lot more finishes on the XM that you can get, a lot more just options in general. But in terms of general aesthetics, this is a purely opinion-based category. So it was dumb for me, to add it, and I'm sorry about that. We'll go ahead and mark it a tie. Next category, also going to be super easy, fit and finish. Chris Reeve has legendary fit and finish. I don't know that there's ever been a problem with Chris Reeve's fit and finish. So those knives are, for the most part, perfect. I'm sure there are anomalies here and there. You know, every now and then, someone gets one that's not absolutely perfect. That's going to be the same way with anything that's any product that's made by hand, that's a production product. It doesn't matter. You know, if you make more than one, if the first one's perfect and you make more than one, there's always a chance that one's not going to be perfect. So now Rick Hinderer, on the other hand, in the past had more fit and finish issues than Chris Reeve, but here, I've had a lot of Hinderers. If you don't believe me, look back on my channel just this year. In total, I've had like 20. And I can tell you, in my experience, the fit and finish is excellent, especially with his new products. Between me and my friend David, who has also owned multiple Hinderers, this most recent sort of Gen 6 with the XM18 or the new tri-way system in the half tracks and the full track, the fit and finish is excellent and absolutely on par with Chris Reeve knives. So for that subcategory, I'm also going to give these knives a tie. For the final category in non-functional, or the final subcategory, we're going to move on to customization. Okay, now again, this is going to be a quick category. You have some options with the Chris Reeve. You've got, if you want the micarta inlays or not, if you want the silver lugs or the blue lugs, or, I don't know if Chris Reeve does the unique graphic thing on the Inkosis. It seems like that's exclusive to Sebenza. I imagine at some point there will be more options. There are a few options to get something interesting with the Inkosi, but it is vastly, vastly outshined in terms of customization by the Hinderer. In fact, every knife that exists is vastly outshined by Hinderer's custom options. Literally almost every part on the entire knife, on a Hinderer knife, can be changed to something else. Not only do you have this massive array of blade shapes that are available to you, you have an enormous amount of finishes that can be applied to the blade, finishes that can be applied to the scales, finishes that can be applied to the hardware, whether it's DLC or anodizing, pretty much every color that you could possibly imagine, flipper and non-flipper. The steel flame stuff, yeah, you're going to pay for it. Yeah, it's crazy expensive. But it's there if you want to do it. As far as your options go for customization, that's an easy win for Hinderer knives. Okay, so let's check in again here because we're at a point, and maybe you think I've set this up on purpose for theatrics. I don't think so. Maybe subconsciously. I really like both of these knives. That's how we ended up here. For function, yeah, the Chris Reeve takes the cake. But keep in mind, look at all those ties. If you're wanting to go with the Hinderer and there are enough either T's or H's there to move you along, then go with the Hinderer. And vice versa. In terms of function, though, in terms of what I'm looking for in terms of function, surprisingly, the Chris Reeve has more functional benefits. Now, non-functional, we've got 2 ties and then 1 to Hinderer. So overall, between functional and non-functional right now, it's actually a tie. So if you're interested in hearing what I have to say about value, then stick around because we're going to go ahead and move into that right now. So for value, what I've got there, what it says is price/materials. The base price on a Hinderer XM18 is $425. That's the version, not this version. This is more expensive because it's a weird special run. But the standard version of the XM18 comes with a G10 on the front, titanium on the back, and then you've got a blade now made of either M390 or 20CV, which is the American equivalent to M390. Yes, you can still get Gen 4s out there for the same price at S35VN. Most people who are going to shop are, we have to take the 20CV and M390 in consideration because it is part of the same base price. If it cost more money, if it was like $450 for 20CV, then I wouldn't count it. But considering it's the exact same price, basically just because they're trying to, get all the Gen 4s sold, we have to consider that. Now, on the Inkosi, you have full titanium on both sides, which absolutely is something to consider. The only option you have for steel is CPM S35VN. Now, that was developed, or at least Chris Reeve had a major hand in development of CPM S35VN along with CPM S30V. So as far as how it's heat treated and whether or not it's appropriate for this knife, I'm not going to argue with literally the guy who invented the steel and invented the frame lock. The guy knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing. That is an excellent steel, no doubt about it. Is it better than CPM 20CV or M390? Not in terms of edge retention and not in terms of corrosion resistance, but it is better in terms of toughness or the edge's ability to resist chipping or fracturing with impact or heavy cutting. So that comes down to what you want out of your knife. Now, in terms of which one costs more money, in terms of like, when you're talking about the overall cost of the knife and cost of manufacturing, I'm going to guess 20CV and M390 are more expensive. So by the knife community standards, M390 and 20CV is generally considered a more premium steel, despite really the thing that we should all be considering is what do we want from our knives? When I have a grail like this knife, yeah, I want it to be M390 or 20CV. Mainly because this is a premium steel. It's nice to have. It's a good feeling to have on a knife that's just going to sit and not be used because it's notoriously a very premium steel, and because it's very corrosion resistant. And if it's going to sit for a long time, I don't want it to corrode while it's in a drawer. But that's not what we're talking about. In terms of the price for the materials that you get, we have a benefit to the Hinderer for having a base of 20CV or M390. But we have a benefit to the Chris Reeve being titanium at base and S35VN. There's a $25 difference between these two knives at base, $425 to $450. Not once in my entire, life of being a knife enthusiast, has $25 changed my mind in this price range. In the $50 to $100 price range, yeah, $25 is, if you're looking at $75 versus $100, that's a 25% difference. So that is a bigger deal. But $425 to $450, that's negligible. If you're up there shopping in this price range, if you're watching this video, that is all that, then that price difference was not enough to change your mind. If it was, you would have already chosen the Hinderer XM18. So, I know a lot of the Hinderer fans are wanting to say, oh, give value to Hinderer. It's $25 less and then they can win the whole thing. I can't do that. That doesn't make any sense. I'm a huge Hinderer fan. My opinion on the Hinderer is that it's the best folding knife that has ever existed. And a lot of Hinderer fans are just like me, where they just, a lot of times they want to turn a blind eye to everything and just go, no, nothing can be better than the Hinderer XM18. I don't want to be like that. I do love the Hinderer, and I do think that it's better than everything. But when it's broken down, when I try to put my wants and needs on paper between functional and non-functional and really logically break it down for everything that I look for in a knife, that's me trying to be unbiased. And to give the Hinderer the win between these two over a $25 difference is irresponsible. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to mark price and value as a tie, honestly, because both of these knives are exceptional. They are both incredibly functional cutting tools that will give the end user the satisfaction and performance and just pride of ownership in general. It's nice to have something like that. And I am fortunate enough to own both of these knives. And believe me, emphasizing fortunate. I am fortunate to have both of these things, because if you'd have asked me 6 or 7 years ago, hey, you think you'll ever end up with an XM18 and a Chris Reeve Inkosi? Back then I think I wanted the Sebenza. I would have said, no way. They're expensive, and back then I couldn't even get my hands on an XM18 for anything less than $800 on the secondary market. So I feel very fortunate to have both. I cannot definitively say which one of these is better, but what I can say here, I can give you guys the total scores between the two. So let's move these out of the way here real quick and add everything up in the final box. So, number of ties, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 ties. Number of wins for the Hinderer, 1, 2, and 3. And the number of wins for the Reeve, we've got 3. Obviously, I mean, I kind of said that they tied there. But I want you guys to look at this, and again, I know this is the third time I've said this, but look over this chart, and any of these things that apply to you, maybe there's things that I didn't go over that you would have wanted me to consider, or maybe that you would consider for yourself. Add those in there alongside my list and the things that, are important to you, and tally those up and come up with your own decision, and then choose the knife that's right for you. That's the most important part of all of this, is choosing the knife that's right for you. If your ultimate knife dreams have come down to these two knives, and you were hoping for me to make that decision for you, I can't, and I don't think any knife reviewer can. It's going to be your decision in the end, and I just really want to emphasize that. In any case, though, my real goal with this video was to create a comprehensive breakdown of these knives and their benefits, or their pros and cons, because this is a big step for somebody moving into this part of the knife world, to make a purchase of over $400 for a cutting tool, hopefully one that is permanently in your pocket, is a big deal. Now, the problem is if you're like me, you make that, you think that that's going to be like your end-all be-all pocket knife, and then you end up buying 20 of them. That's not the most beneficial financial plan. But if you are more user oriented, hopefully you buy one and you keep it forever, and it's absolutely the most beneficial companion that you could have in terms of a small utility tool. Hopefully that's what happens, and hopefully this helps you make that decision and you stay happy with your decision forever. But that is pretty much it. I hope this wasn't disappointing. I hope this gave some people some clarity or some insight, or I don't know. I hope it helped in some way. I truthfully love both of these knives, and while I'm EDCing the Inkosi right now, there will absolutely come another XM18 that I will want to carry. I don't have one that I carry right now or that's in my carry rotation, but I definitely will again. I always do. There's always one that comes back, and I continue to use it. Both excellent knives. This was really fun to do. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, then please subscribe to my channel because there is definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, and have a great day.